This is Duke University.
Last and certainly not least, but an important story, I think, for all of us living here in this country. Jeff Fowler is going to talk to you about very important things.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start with an apology because I don't know if the crud that has been creeping around DC has made its way down here, but I have certainly gotten it. And so you'll hear it in my voice, but if you'll bear with me, I want to tell you a story. The story is about an institution that had to go through a transformation. And I entitled this A Leader in Information Sharing because when you think of CIA, I am certain that you do not think a leader in information sharing. At best, it is a bad joke or an oxymoron. But I think what I am going to do for you today is tell you how a little program called WIRE, World Intelligence Review, helped the agency go through this period of transformation. Now, I'm going to set the stage for just a minute. We live in a very unique world. In our world, this walking the wire is the truth of our business. If we share too much information, bad people get that information and people die. This is true. If we share too little information, decisions are ill-informed, bad decisions are made, and people die. It sucks, but that's the reality of the environment in which we operate. And so we have these poles pulling in opposite directions, protect information, share information, and all are well-intentioned, well-motivated, but neither really has the answer to the problem, which is really informing national security decision-making. So the truth of the matter is, these days it's a good time to be part of CIA. We've been having some real successes in the war on terrorism. But those successes, you just have to remember, come because of some very significant failures earlier in our history. And we remember that on a daily basis. We had to take some stock from that. We also recognized that the world around us was changing. Our institution was largely about producing paper, about producing intelligence reports, intelligence analysis, getting it out to a select number of people. It really wasn't about leveraging information systems in a dramatic way to get that information out. This should be a little video. I apologize that it's not. But the program that we engaged in was, in fact, about this, enabling secure and global information sharing. That is to say that the polls didn't have the answer, that the answer for our business lay in between. That is, we could have secure global information sharing. And the trick of this, by the way, was recognizing that it wasn't about sharing the information, it was about sharing the knowledge of the existence of the information, right? We all know sort of the you don't know what you don't know problem. So if you don't know it exists, how do you know to ask for it if you need it? Okay, so you have to know it exists. Now, in the old mindset, the only way you could know it exists is by having access to that information in the first place. But in fact, technology and some social elements allow you to know of the existence of information with sufficient granularity while also protecting that information so only those who really need to know it can access it. And that's the magic. That was the sweet spot that we were trying to achieve in this program. And as part of that, we did this, FIRE. We love WIRE, World Intelligence Review, FIRE, another IRE word, all about branding, right? Framework of intelligence relationships. This is the notion that all knowledge is best presented in the context of related knowledge. This works in everything you think about, right? A good briefing. What are you doing? You're presenting information and you are synthesizing that information. You are connecting it to everything else that is relevant. It's actually what happens on the social web. It is the interconnection of that data that makes it valuable to people. Now, I'm going to stop here for just a moment and take you back to 2001 and 9/11 and the horror of that time. And then shortly after that, the WMD Commission and the failure of the intelligence community with respect to identifying weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and those bad decisions that took place. And in that context, you had a community and an institution which was being reorganized. And so really, in sort of business parlance, if you will, we had a business that had lost its way, that didn't understand the market in which it was operating. It had not transformed to adapt to that new market, not the business of intelligence, but the business of information and information awareness and provision securely. And we had what was, in effect, a sullied brand. And so our leadership at that time took a fairly bold step, in my view, and they said, you know, we need to recognize our failures. We need to reestablish our analytic credibility with our customers. That was goal one, reestablish analytic credibility. Goal two, pioneer during a time of great change around us. Because the other challenge that was going on for my particular institution was that we didn't really know who we were anymore. Because the legislation said director of CIA is no longer the director of the community. And we said, well, geez, if we're not head of the community, what are we? And the director for intelligence, an official still very high up, but just a little down, said, look, being central is not about the name of your organization. It's not about the title of your director, and it's not even about legislation which says you're central or not. What it's about is being central, being essential to your customers. In our case, our customers, the national security decision maker, and the warfighters in the field, and the policy-making community. We needed to transform to be essential. So this was part of this journey. Well, what we did was we started interconnecting information in a fairly simple way. So back in 2001, there was this system called CIA Source. It was basically an online system that integrated our information and made it available over the secure networks that we use. In 2006, when we started the WIRE program, that secure network, that web presence, if you will, was being used by 750 people a day. Whoa. Right? We're talking about supporting military, policy, communities, 750 people a day. And so we created this new thing called WIRE, and we said in our program where we wanted to take this, we want to do four things. We want to reestablish or establish this new voice, this new thing that represents us, WIRE. Two, we want to pioneer by going online. Three, we want to think like a business and really understand our customers, dialogue with them, have great data, metrics, and make data-driven decisions, imagine. And four, this Web 2.0 social stuff, we don't really get it, but we know it's important, and we want to incorporate it into our business. So it was a leap of faith at that point. And so we started interconnecting all of the data, and we made, and here's sort of a social element, we made connections both known and discovered, right? Known relationships, discovered relationships. A known relationship in data is we wrote this intelligence report and we used these sources to get to that intelligence report. Known relationships. And we also used this source for this other intelligence report, known relationship. So now these pieces of data are connected. A discovered relationship, you deal with this all the time when you interact with places like Amazon.com, right? You come to it, say, oh, you're interested in this, you might be interested in that. Why is that? Well, it's because other people have navigated through that data. And so what we started to do was leverage the social interaction with our data to create connections in that data to make it, again, more valuable to the users. So leveraging a social principle, leveraging the body of the customer base, if you will, to make that content more useful to customers. And on top of that, this is really washed out in this slide, I apologize. What you're looking at here is actually Adobe Insight. It's a very powerful web metrics tool that we've got overlaid on top of the Wire site, which unfortunately I can't show you. But this is giving me data, actually live data, as people are interacting with the site. And so I'm knowing when people are hitting, where they're coming from, what they're looking at, where they're going to. And in my world, I need to know that for counterintelligence purposes on the one hand, but on the other hand, I need to know it so I can make my information more readily available and more useful to that customer set. So I've got this going on. On the data of some of the things that's telling us, we're able to actually now break down the customer base, if you will, and how we're doing reaching them. A large number of our customers are the intelligence community, informing colleagues, but also military and policy. But the interesting thing about these numbers, so that's the percent of the customer, right? But it doesn't talk about market share. What we discovered was this amazing thing. Even though the smallest sort of total number of people who are our customers are out of the policy, that's actually the largest market share that we've been able to penetrate. More than 50% of policymakers who can be customers are customers. That's great. And that, by the way, gets to domination. When we started Wire at the very beginning, it was a joke between myself and a colleague who started this. We said, we're going to make this one wire to rule them all. Right? It was going to be one program to dominate, to move forward, and to really break the paradigm and allow information sharing. So that's what you see, market share. Even though military was the largest total of numbers, it's actually the smallest market share of penetration. Why? Well, because it's an enormous market, right? So you only got a smaller portion of it, but doing extremely well on the policy. Oops, let me get back to this. Okay. So about numbers. So here's an interesting thing. Remember when I said that initial web presence, that old thing was being accessed by 750 users a day? So in the run-up to the launch of Wire external to the agency, we actually opened it up to the internal organization and said, this is going to be your new face to your customers. We want you to help us make it better. And they were very brutal. And it was great that they were. We engaged them, and for every comment that we got, we responded. Now, not every comment was good. We didn't do everything that the corporation said, the people in the corporation, oh, we think you should do this, or we think you should do that. But we responded to every one of the requests, every suggestion, and we made it better. So guess what? First 100 days after launch to the customer set, readership, CIA source, 750 people a day. 100 days, 2,500 for Wire. Okay, now these don't sound like large numbers, and they're not in the internet world. In the in sort of the intelligence world, these start to get to be very large numbers. Today, the number of readers is actually in excess of 200,000 around the globe. And that's amazing. And those 200,000 are interacting with that data, creating these connections in the data, starting from the intelligence report of a particular institution, but using that to then link to other reports across the institutions. Again, leveraging the social principles for the benefit of the user. The other neat thing about this particular graphic is this is a demonstration of how we live in the world of information sharing, information security. So that top bar shows you how many people have insight into the individual existence of content. That bottom little head on an individual article, that shows how many people access that individual article. So what this allows us to do, right? They can discover it, but not everybody needs it. And so we're able to live in this joint world. The social interaction I've touched on a bit as we've gone on here. In addition to the sort of leveraging the interaction of the readership, we allow them to comment openly, unedited comments on intelligence reports. I have to tell you, this was kind of an interesting thing early on for our producers. So analysts are pretty tough people, really. I mean, and CIA people in general, fairly tough people. But I can't tell you how many phone calls I would get from the analysts when the first time they would get an online comment saying that somebody didn't think their analysis was good. It's like, grow a skin, I mean, it was just funny. But they've adapted to this, and it's fantastic. They've really engaged now in sort of a dynamic online type of conversation. We've started to understand our customer more. We've already talked a little bit in other sessions about using the social principles. And I keep coming back to principles, not tools, because for me it is about culture. It is about sort of principles and adaptation, not just about the tools. So we're understanding more that we're in this business and that we need to understand our customers and interact with them. Again, the social concept. So the takeaways from this, for me, innovation in government is a real and honest-to-goodness thing, and it actually parallels business. Anyone know, by the way, who this guy is on the far left? A wire pen for anybody who gets the right answer. That's Tesla. Tesla, he is the father of the modern technological revolution. And then, the next guy, I hope, Edison, right? Right? And you got to know him, right? These are visionaries. They are people who are visionaries in business, but what made them important is that they could actually take the concepts of the environment in which they are operating with and apply them. And that's sort of the task here, isn't it, really? It's understanding sort of the social principles and the social tools and applying them to a business sense, or in my world, the business of intelligence. Okay, having a vision for the future. This is essential everywhere. Frankly, it's not a Web 2.0 principle. It's not a social principle. It's just an important principle. If you don't know where you're going, you're not going to be able to get there, right? Or you're going to find yourself someplace, but you don't really know if that's the place that you wanted to get to. This is saying to folks that sometimes you actually have to change the debate. And just because people say it's about information sharing or information security doesn't mean that either of them are right. In this case, it was redefining the debate allowed us to find a way forward leveraging these social principles. Brand credibility. Branding in sort of this exercise, this wire exercise, was again a central part of it. We recognized that our brand was sullied and we needed to demonstrate a sincere and protracted effort to actually show that we were better, that we were, enhancing our analytic credibility, that we were pioneering, that we were leading, that we were worthy of the attention and trust and respect of our customers. Collect and use data, to your point, got to have it, got to make decisions based on it. Government is not particularly good at that, by the way. Always true. This is true too, and so for us, it doesn't stop there. What we say to ourselves is we cannot rest on our laurels. We really, truly need to raise the bar across the board in terms of information sharing, in terms of the dynamic of the environment, in terms of saying, you know what, yeah, that's great. We share in paper, good. We share better online now, great. Now we need to share mobilely. Guess what? We're actually doing that. And we also need to do just like a business. We need to think about the sort of the business dynamics, reduce the cost, increase the output. So I had to write my performance appraisal for the last year for Wire, for managing the program. One of the things I was able to say because of that great data and the focus on it is over the course of the last year, we increased readership by 25% overall. We increased daily readership 27% overall. We increased the product output 25% overall. We kept the workforce associated with it flat, and we reduced the cost by 10%. It's not a bad year. I really wish I were in business because then I could actually get a bonus, but we don't do that in government, but that's okay. And then, yeah, this one, best tool. Let's try that again. Best tool is a good manager. You saw it. Best tool is a good manager, and that's true. The message I would deliver to you, we focus a lot on technology today. We focus a lot on social. We focus a lot on sort of concepts, but this is the reality of it. And what you see up here, I like Wordles too. In fact, for our program, we took a Wordle that represented sort of an ethos exercise for the program, and we put it on the wall in our space as a constant reminder of who and what we are and what we want to be. Collaboration is the biggest word on that wall. Trust is the second biggest word on that wall back home. This is what I've been trying to talk about here today. Sometimes, words get a little bit smaller, a little bit larger for this presentation. And then to this point, you bet. That, by the way, is a little bit of insight in terms of what part of the site looks like. So, a leader in information sharing, that's where I began. That's where I'll end. And I'll say, yeah, actually I think we are. And if you think about it, if CIA can do it, come on. Really? Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure, my pleasure.
Okay. The reason we call these things immersion days is because the further you go in, it's like you're walking through the soup and becoming punch drunk at all these new the new lingo, what it means, going through technology, and I really want to thank both speakers for kind of saying what it looks like and what it feels like when it comes together. Some threads to pull through that is, it's kind of like you goose the community, both of you, and once they saw the value, you could reduce 10%, but you could get more people using it. So it's kind of like almost, how can you get yourself out of the way? This is the question I was asking Sandy, and something I know Dave and I, at least certainly me, but back in the early days with IBM, is there's something magical in the informality. We used to call it engineering knowledge accidents. How do you engineer knowledge accidents? Well, is that the right question? Because there's something that's fluid about serendipity that if you try to over-engineer, you get in trouble. But there's probably enough that you can do to put some kind of function around it to where you can really tap into the next level, which is not just about access to information, but what it means. So one of the things I tweeted is it's almost like now the intelligence report in your context is the springboard for social sense-making around it, And in your context, I love the flipping of the equation to everyone's a teacher. What will you teach? There's no more of, let me stand behind the podium, spray and pray, see how much sticks through a test. That's not what learning is anymore. Learning, certainly there's a component of compliance. But to me, generative learning, thinking up stuff that doesn't matter anymore, that's what or that is absolutely important in the future, I'm sorry. Stuff that doesn't matter anymore is what we generally train. The drag coefficient creates us, we're teaching old habits because we push it through a training factory system that doesn't allow us to be nimble. And people like Steve Jobs don't do that. They take the inferential leap to the future. How do we do that collectively as an organization? So I think there were two very, very good stories. Thank you.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.